All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, for the first time since 1979, the Florida Gators have compiled consecutive losing seasons on the gridiron. Yesterday's 30-3 loss in the Las Vegas Bowl, courtesy of the Oregon State Beavers out of the Pac-12 Conference, ended what has been an up and down season for Florida. This was the first year for the Gators under new head coach Billy Napier. It was a transition period, which was very tough to get done in the always tough Southeastern Conference. In Napier's first year in the SEC, his record was 3-5. And you look at what Florida had to deal with. They lost early on at home to Kentucky, losing on the road against a good Tennessee team, losing at home to LSU, losing in Jacksonville to Georgia. Then on top of that, the surprising loss to Vanderbilt late in the season. And then, of course, Florida State is not an SEC team, but the Gators ended their regular season by losing to their in-state rivals. Now, heading into 2023, obviously things need to change for Florida if they are going to be a better team and more competitive in the SEC. First and foremost, the Gators have to fix their defense as Florida was 96th this year in total defense. And to give you an idea of how the Gators struggled on that side of the ball, Florida scored more than 30 points against Tennessee. They scored more than 30 points against LSU, and they scored more than 30 points against Florida State, and they lost all of those contests. The thing is, the Gators they have to get back to the explosiveness on both sides of the ball, especially defense, as far as being able to go out there and attack and set the tone. That was something we didn't see this year, and that's something we didn't see last year for this Florida team under Dan Mullen either. This year, the Gators finished the year on the three-game losing streak, losing at Vanderbilt, losing at Florida State, and then, of course, just losing to Oregon State in the bowl game. And I mean, yes, it was 30-3. The Gators had their opportunities early, but they were unable to seize the moment. And when you're facing a good Oregon State team, and Oregon State is a good team, you have to be able to seize the moment. And unfortunately for Florida, they were unable to do that, and they paid for it in a big time way. Florida must also solidify their quarterback position. I know that Anthony Richardson took the bulk of the reps this year, but he's not coming back. They have some other issues at the quarterback position as well. And that's something that has to change going forward. You need a quarterback in order to win, especially in the Southeastern Conference. Now, for me, I do feel that Napier is the guy at Florida. I know that obviously there are going to be some Florida fans that are upset by how his first year went down. Of course, obviously also the success of Florida's rivals, two of Florida's biggest rivals in Florida and Tennessee, and then of course, um, the resurgence of Florida State is not going to help things for the Gator Nation as well. But you look at it, some tough losses for Florida this year. They lost all of their big games theoretically, losing to Kentucky, losing to LSU, losing to Tennessee, losing to Georgia, losing to Florida State. That definitely has to change heading into 2023. Now, for Napier, he does have a solid recruiting class coming in to Gainesville for next year, a top 20 recruiting class. Obviously, recruiting is one thing, but you still got to coach them up and they have to go out there and execute on the gridiron. But I do feel that Napier is the guy. You think back to his time with the Raging Cajuns in the Sun Belt Conference, he went 7-7 his first year, and the next year he followed that up with an 11-3 mark. Easier said than done in the Sun Belt. No disrespect to the Sun Belt, but the Sun Belt is not the SEC. So Napier and Florida, they obviously still have their work cut out for them heading into next year. And it's going to be easier said than done for Florida to try to keep up in the SEC because the Gators have themselves a very brutal schedule. Now, for years, Florida has really, with the exception of facing Florida State, they really haven't stepped out of conference. to face other Power Five foes. That changed this past year when they hosted Utah to begin the season. Next season, they will begin their season at Rice Eccles Stadium in Salt Lake City against the defending Pac-12 champions in the Utah Utes. And of course, Rice Eccles is never an easy place to play. So let's see how the Florida Gators deal with that. But aside from that, 2 weeks after that, Florida hosts Tennessee to begin SEC play. 2 weeks after that, they're on the road in Lexington to take on a Kentucky team that has become a big thorn in the side of the Gators in recent years under head coach Mark Stoops. Um, Going to South Carolina and facing Shane Beamer and crew on the 14th of October, coming back off of their bye for the last Saturday of October to take on Georgia in Jacksonville. Following that up by hosting Arkansas and then at LSU on November 11th, at Missouri on November 18th. And Missouri is another one of those programs that should be improved for 2023, but they've also given Florida plenty of problems since they've been in the SEC as well. And then, of course, the Gators finish at home on Thanksgiving weekend against Florida State. So the question is going to be: how will the Gators fare in year number two under Billy Napier? Obviously, we have to wait and see, but nonetheless, a lot of things have to be taken care of. Getting your new recruits up to speed, taking care of your quarterback position. Obviously, the transfer portal has helped a lot of programs because you can get things turned around just like that if you get the right guy to come in and play quarterback for you. So it's going to be interesting to see that dynamic for Florida heading into 2023. And then, of course, Napier now has another year under his belt in Gainesville to work and establish his program and his system. And now all of the players and personnel have a year there as well, especially last year's recruiting class. So let's see how those youngsters can take the next step and make the transition from year one to year number two for Billy Napier. It's a work in progress. And I know that a lot of the Gator Nation wants to see Florida get back among the nation's elite. And it's totally understandable when you see what Georgia has been doing in the SEC, what Alabama has been doing, how quickly things turned around for LSU under Brian Kelly, the resurgence of Tennessee. Obviously, if you're Florida, you think, you know what, you want to be a part of that, and rightfully so, because you think about how important Florida has been to the SEC for the last 30 years. The all of the trips to the SEC championship game, winning multiple SEC championships under both Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer. And it's been a while since Florida has won the SEC championship game. They got there a couple of years ago under Dan Mullen, but they just ran into a very tough Alabama team that did go on to win the national title that year. But nonetheless, it's going to be interesting to see how this team transitions under Napier from year one to year two. And if Florida gets off to a slow start, there are going to be people that want them to move on from Napier. I don't think Florida should do that. I don't think they would do that. Again, it's a process. And I think Florida should be an improved team next year. How much they improve, we just simply have to wait and see. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.